Nau mai, haere mai, e te whānau. Welcome to the Flight of the Nix podcast. My name's Holly. I'm here on a now dry Gadigal land in Sydney, as is Mr. Danny Avis. Erin is in Tamuki Makaurau, Auckland, and in Te Whanganui, Atara, Wellington. We have Alex. Oh, right. I hope that you had a listen to our women's season review. We'll do the men now. Quite a depressing season as well. In fact, more depressing in a lot of ways. Let's just start with the basic stats, though, to run you through those. If you've forgotten, we finished 11th. Out of the 26 games, we had 6 wins, 6 draws, 14 losses, scored 27 goals, conceded 43 for a goal difference of -16. We had a squad of Josh Aluaimi, Albie Kelly-Hill, Dublin Boone, Corbin Piper, Scott Wooten, Tim Payne, Lucas Kelly-Hill, Sam Sutton, Matthew Sheridan, Shuan Loke, Jaden Smith, Finn Conchi, Paolo Retre, Hideki Ishige, Francesco Geraldes, Chico, Alex Rufer, Isaac Hughes, Kazuki Nagasawa, Lachlan Candy, Costa Barbarousis, Stefan Kolakovsky, Gabriel Sloan Rodriguez, Marco Rojas, Luke Supik, Luke Brooksmith, Nathan Walker. Goals-wise, the standout was Costa with 10 goals, Corbin Piper with 3, 2 goals each for Nagasawa, Retre, Ishige, Hughes, and 1 goal apiece for LBS, Chico, Walker, Suts, Scotty, and Tim. I think it probably helps at this point to mention the players that we lost partway through the season through injury or illness, or they departed. So actually injury, illness, we'll focus on that first. Marco, Rufa, Albie, Tim, Collar, Chico, which is a lot, which is crazy. And then we had some others leave for other reasons, like Oscar Van Haddam and David Ball and Mo Altai, I believe. Who wants to start?
No one really wants to talk about the season, do we? We're all trying to forget it really happened and trying to look forward to next season, or even that's getting a bit more difficult now. For me, if I had to describe the season in one word, it would probably be joyless. There just wasn't much fun, let's be honest. We can handle a season where we're not that good as long as there's a reason to go to games. And, there's moments within those games or times in the game that you actually enjoy, whether that's a good goal or a moment of skill or a passage of play, or longer term, if there's, maybe a young player that's come through and doing well, or that sort of thing. There just wasn't enough of that this season. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and, obviously there's been a lot of postmortems of the season going on across social media and the blogosphere, etc. Everyone's looking for an easy answer. I don't think there is one particular easy answer. I think there's a lot of reasons why it didn't go well this season. And I think it's the corollary or complete opposite of why we had such a good season last season. There are so many things that have to go right for a team to do well in the league. The league is tight. I know it doesn't look like it when you got Auckland at one end and Perth at the other, but there's not much between the teams, and small things can make a big difference. And for a team such as ourselves, where we don't have a lot of resources compared to some of the other teams, we need everything to go right for us to succeed. Last year, everything went right. This year, very little went right. And you can put the blame on many things. Injuries, I think, is probably the biggest thing that hurt us. We lost a lot of our great players, our better players, our more experienced players for too long. And the season's too short to really pick that back up. Recruitment wasn't as good as it has been in previous seasons. Some of the players who came in just didn't perform as well as we would have hoped. We got a bit of bad luck through that. I think one of the reasons we did so badly is because we did so well last season, which sounds weird, but that meant that a lot of our good players left because they did so well. Everyone else wanted them, and they took them probably a lot sooner than we thought, especially with the younger players who were never expected to lose 3 or 4 good academy players. Tactics. The tactics we started off playing, we didn't have the players to play that. And then when we changed that to go back to tactics of last season, we didn't really have the players to do that very efficiently either. And that contributed in no small part to the joylessness of the season, because The tactics we played, the whole low block and hitting them on the break, it's fine if you score a couple of goals because you can rely on those goals to give you a bit of joy. But when you've got no attacking players very well, it's just a bit of a drag, and I think that's what most people saw. So a lot of things went wrong or didn't go particularly well. And for a team like us, we can't afford anything to go wrong if we want to succeed. Too many things went wrong, and we ended up down the bottom of the season, and everyone had been a bit disillusioned and not really having enjoyed themselves very much. Again, pointing fingers at people is easy and cathartic, but I don't think it necessarily really helps. I'm sure the club are looking at what went wrong and trying to put that right for next season. We just got to hope that they're putting the right things in place.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Danny, especially, about not wanting to talk about the season. I didn't want to. It was actually why I was late for this podcast. I was just so keen to get it behind me and just forget about it. And all the reasons, about why we weren't performing. There's so many reasons. I think I've kind of narrowed it down to my top three reasons. First one is the Auckland games just took it out of us. I think it's the first season we've had, really competitive games, and, we probably just don't know how to deal with that, and we lost them, and, that's kind of morale shattering, and you put in so much effort into those games, and to get nothing out of them as we did, it's really demoralizing. It's kind of hard to bounce back from that. And the second one is injuries to key players, halfway through the season. Football is such a momentum-based sport that, you build up momentum through the start of the season, as we did. And then Alex Rufer, Tim Payne, they all got their injuries out in the middle of the season. And then, season's too short to build that back up. And the third one is the imports not performing. You can put it on them. You can blame it on the imports themselves, or you can blame it on the recruitment. I don't really care. They weren't performing. They weren't up to scratch. And, we have to have a better shot at it next season.
Yeah, what these guys said, it's the same thing. I think we probably lost one too many players in the off season. I think maybe if we'd kept BK, or we kept, one of the players we lost being old or something, then we may have had a better chance of actually doing something. But I think we put in too much inexperience, and as well with our players that we brought in to replace them, our visa players, just not being able to meet the standard that we needed them to. It just really didn't work out for us, and it kind of all came crashing down at once. I think at one point we were third or second on the table, and I was like, hey, actually we're not doing too badly. And then I feel like everything broke at the same time, and we just took a massive tumble, and we just never recovered from it. And we're still tumbling, I think, at this point in time. And so massive off season that is supposed to happen. And we need to recruit some better players and more players as well. I feel like we're losing them and not replacing them. And I think even still, the players we lost halfway through this season, I think they weren't a massive loss, but we just didn't replace them with anyone. And we were losing players as we were getting injuries. And so we were letting go our strikers when all of our strikers were injured. And then we had to just put defenders up and play every position with defenders because we just weren't bringing anyone else in. And it was kind of messy. And I think it wasn't even like it was good football to watch. Watching defensive football when you're not winning is just horrible. And we didn't really do anything creative to make it exciting to actually watch. We weren't really trying to score goals. Well, from the looks of it, they were probably trying to score goals, but they weren't doing anything fun to try to score goals. And it was just boring to watch, and it was draining to watch. And hopefully we kind of have a bit of a refresh and come into the season with, even if we have the same players, with a new game plan to make it a bit more exciting.
Yeah, it was a depressing watch a lot. I mean, we had periods in games here and there where you saw the flashes of what we could be, but they were so few and far between. And I think my biggest frustration throughout the season was continuing with the same coaching tactics. continuing to play out from the back with players who were struggling with that, and just this like seemingly unwillingness to actually like draw a line under and go, shit, okay, we've tried and tried and tried, and we actually just have to cut our losses. And we started doing that when a little bit when Josh came in for Albie when he got injured because he couldn't. So basically we went back to playing that long ball, which again, there's all sorts of like advantages and disadvantages, but that's what frustrated me the most was, yes, we got very unlucky with the run of injuries and illnesses. Some of those departures, they were agreed to by the club to free up money, or the person genuinely did have to leave. So it's hard, and I think that in a lot of ways we did get caught with a run of bad luck. I think in addition to that, the fact that our noisy JAFA neighbours have had such a successful season, and there's all sorts of reasons about why they have a successful season. A big part of that is money and no salary cap and buzz and all of that kind of thing. But I think, that's made it worse. It's just like we've had a shit season when Auckland's had a good season, and then we did lose a lot of players, whether temporarily or not. And then to compound that with like what felt like sticking with the same tactics that weren't working and then playing way too defensively, I can see why a lot of fans are really frustrated, really, really frustrated with this season.
It's interesting though, because Central Coast, who did the treble or quadruple or however many they did last season, only finished one above us with, similar goals scored and more goals conceded. And I feel like maybe I don't follow enough people on social media, but I hear less about them than I do about our season when they were also successful last season, actually 2 seasons in a row. So
you're right, and I think that is actually a fair comparison. And it was actually a little bit surprising that Mariners managed to pull that off 2 years in a row. But yeah, I don't follow that many Mariners people, but the rhetoric and the tone around how the Mariners have fallen off has been quite different than it has been for us. I think it's been a lot worse for us. I don't know where the comparison goes, Danny.
We've got to remember that the league is actually designed so teams can't be successful over a longer period of time. That's the whole point of the salary cap, is that if you are good, your players will leave, and therefore you'll have to rebuild. It's designed so one team or a team doesn't dominate over a length of time. Now, it's easier for the better resource clubs to rebuild if they get rid of some of their players. It's a lot harder for the smaller clubs. Central Coast doing it 2 years in a row is amazing. Well done. We weren't able to do that because we lost too many players last year. And I don't think we planned to lose that many players last year. Okay, I know our strategy is to take kids out of the academy, develop them, and then sell them on. But I don't think we expected to lose 3 of them all in 1 year. Now, I'm sure the accountants were like, brilliant, we're getting money for them now. But I'm sure the football side of it were like, well, no, I probably wasn't expecting to lose Alex Paulson, who had played less than 30 full-time professional games to a Premier League club. I'm sure we did not expect to lose him last season. He was probably supposed to be here for another 2 years. Similarly with Sermon, probably another year, or Old another year. But they all happened to come to a peak in 1 year when we did really well, and so we got rid of them all, which meant that this year the academy people that we had to put in basically just weren't ready. Some of them, like Hughes, first team player, Sheridan possibly, but Walker, we didn't even have a photo of him on the team sheet when he came in for his first game. No one knew who he was, and they ended up playing far more minutes than I think they probably should have done, which didn't help us, and possibly is not going to help them in their development. So I don't think that's a great thing. But again, that was the result of us having such a good season last year. This is the way the league is designed. It's going to be roller coasters to an extent. It's how you manage to flatten out to an extent. And Phoenix have tried to do that by having a strong academy, so they've always got people to bring through. But it's not always going to work. And when you then throw in again less than stellar recruitment for our overseas players, and then the injuries, and I can't stress the injuries enough, we see what happens. This is what happened. Yes, we could have made it better with ourselves by actually playing some attractive football, made it better for the fans anyway. I don't think we would have done better in the league. And as much as we complain about the defensive football, and I haven't done this stats, but in my head, I think if you looked at the games where we did play a bit more expansive football and we scored a couple of goals, we still lost. And I think we probably got more points when we played the defensive football. And if you're chiefy and your job's on the line, you just want to get points. You don't really care about how entertaining it is. That's for the fans to worry about. Not great for us, and I wish we had played more of that entertaining football, but I don't think we would have finished much higher up on the table, to be fair.
I think a lot of the rhetoric and kind of major disappointment about the season and anger at the club and the owners and stuff comes from relatively new fans that kind of we attracted a lot of fans last season because we had such a great season, and then those fans probably expected to see more of the same this season, and we didn't do that, and I think generally critical voices tend to be louder voices, especially online, and if like a fan like me who I don't really see a problem with how much the owners are investing in the club, and I like the way the club is heading in terms of youth and stuff, that those voices don't really go as far as the ones that hate the owners.
Yeah, we kind of catfished people a little bit there, having a successful season and then just totally dropping off to kind of classic Nix. I think we might be on the MTV show soon.
Total bait and switch. Success is always relative as well, and unfortunately we now have someone to judge ourselves against, and they obviously did very well, and so that just makes our failure that much worse. Whereas previously we were comparing ourselves against your Central Coast or your Newcastle teams around our size, and they weren't doing very well. If we hadn't have had those people up north doing so well, I think we'd just be pissed off. But we don't normally expect to do better than Sydney or Western Sydney Wanderers or Melbourne Victory. We appreciate the advantages they have, but when the JAFAs come in, and we know they have advantages, but they just look to be doing everything went well for them. Everything that went badly for us went well for them, and it just makes us feel that much worse.
So we've had quite a few departures in the off season, by now. So we've had I did write a list. We already talked about, I guess, OVH, Ball and Mo, but we now know we've lost Costa, potentially to someone like Wanderers, Checo, who I think the club wanted to re-sign, but the injury is way too much of a risk. Suts and Wooten off to Perth, which, I mean, if you offer someone Wooten's age a 3-year deal, I mean, he's probably going to take that. Suts is probably being offered a lot of money. I get the sense that going to Perth is about the incentives in the contracts rather than necessarily being like, oh, I'm going to go play for a better team, because they're not a better team, and I don't see them actually being any better next season, Perth. They might be a little bit like Ollie Sale, like, sweet, take this nice contract and then be a crap team all season. I don't know. I feel for the Glory fans. So got a few friends of that. Wellington B.
They have five ex-Phoenix players potentially in their first 11 next year.
So we need a lot of recruitment. So we need a centre-back to replace Scotty. We do need to find a creative midfielder again. We do need like a 9 or a 10, like a goal scorer. We need. There's lots of places that, because a lot of these players, they were starting players. So we've got another rebuild. And perhaps the other thing with the departures is that basically all of Chiefs' support staff have gone for different reasons. So you've also got to turn around, you've got to recruit for that as well, particularly roles like assistant coach, because they play a massive role in how the team functions. What do we do? I mean, we've freed up some visa spots, but there's only sort of still so much money, and there's hopefully going to be an increase in the central disbursement of funds when a new TV deal is signed or broadcast deal is signed, but that's probably not next season, I don't think. I think we're still kind of stuck. We have to be really smart about our recruitment this time.
Do you think in the interview for the kitman job, they made them drive from the stadium to the to the institute to see how long they could take to get the new shirts? I think that was part of the requirements.
Realistically, still a lot of our squad next year is still going to be the youngsters, and possibly the fact that they've got lots of minutes this year is a good thing. Yeah, I have my doubts. I think some of those players were overplayed, but some of them probably will. I think someone like Luke Brooks-Smith has probably gone brilliant. I think he'll have revelled in that he's got more of that. But we've still got to bring some people in, and we've got some huge losses there. So in terms of our senior players, so Wotton gone, massive loss, I think, and I think we need to bring in a very experienced, probably visa player in there, or very experienced Australian player. Costa going is when I sort of lost. I won't say I lost all hope for next season, but any sort of optimism I had for next season that is now being put on hold, because Costa had every reason to stay. I think there's a lot of reasons to stay. I don't think he's gone for a huge amount more money somewhere else. He's decided to play his football somewhere else. Maybe they're paying him a bit more, but I don't think it's a lot of money. And the reasons for him to stay in Wellington were probably quite high as well. He would have been the best paid player in the team. He would have been the captain of the team. He would have been, the icon of the team. He's living at home, etc. All those reasons. All white squad, World Cup coming up, and he's chosen to move somewhere else, and that's worrying for me, because now in terms of senior players, we've got Rufer and Payne, and that's really it. Senior Kiwi players. We're going to have to get some good, I think, experienced players in to start building that team culture around again. Players like Paolo Retre isn't. And I don't know who they will be. They're probably going to have to be Australians, maybe some Kiwis from overseas, but I'm not even sure who that would be at this stage.
Yeah, I think a massive push needs to go for, recruiting those key positions. Striker is a big one. I'm kind of trying to see the optimism about these players leaving. I'm trying really hard, and I'm getting a tiny bit of optimism. With Costa, he's aging. He's probably on heaps of money, and can we get a better striker for that price range? You look at a Visa and Costa. He's short, he's fast, he runs it behind defenses really well. But if we want a big man up the top, that allows us to play in a completely different way. And Costa is kind of somewhat limiting tactically. With Wotton, he's also aging, and can you get another Visa centre-back that is around the same quality or higher? I reckon you can. I reckon there's heaps out there, even England, same place where he came from. It's a big pool, and I think Sutton's actually... I'm actually a bit disappointed about Sutton leaving, because, he's a hometown boy. He's played for us for ages, and I think he was evolving into quite a good left-back in the A-League. But hopefully Lucas can fill his shoes. I can't imagine us signing another left back, given all the other positions that we have to fill.
All right, do we want to chat Chiefy being re-signed? I do feel like we have talked about that prior to that. Any further comment on it? Like I said, I love Chiefy, but I was a little bit disappointed in what seemed like taking way too long to change tactics, considering how we were. And the club talked a lot about short memories, and there's all the goodwill that he had banked up from the season before last. But the sign of a strong coach is not when they're doing well; it's when they're not doing well, and how they adapt to that. But I love Chiefy though; he's a nice guy.
A lot of time for Chiefy, and we've got to remember he didn't just do well last season. He was part of the under Ufi, he was part of the team that did well for the previous seasons before that. Not as well, but we did pretty well and recruited really well and played some decent football. So he's been successful at the club longer than he has been successful at the club. But you've got to look at his assistant coach, Adam Griffiths, has gone, and a lot of the backroom team has gone as well. So whatever happens, even with Chiefy here, it's going to be a different coaching team. They haven't announced who his assistant and they said coaches are going to be, so we're not sure what's going to happen there. So it's really up in the air. Whether he should have stayed or not, again, I don't think we have the information to know that, to be honest, because we don't see what's happened behind the scenes, how he is with the players, how the squad's holding together, how's the morale. We just have to trust that the people who made that decision have seen all that and made the correct decision. I hope he does. I really hope he does well because, again, I think he seems like a nice guy. He really loves football. He's a bit of a football nerd, which, is funny to see, and he's very open when he talks. And really, hopefully, he can work it out. I don't know if he can, but, fingers crossed.
I also think he would have learnt a lot from this season. How to what it's like even to have a team down in the slumps, because he's probably never actually had a team. I think he's been a pretty successful coach throughout his career. I don't know if he's ever had a team that needs picking up like we did. I guess kind of all of our coaches do well in their first year. If we did, Chiefy did. I guess it's just up to him to prove that wrong, and hopefully he can do well next season too.
Yeah, I heard Chiefy say that he always wins trophies in his third year, so hopefully we're ready to lift some silverware next season.
Europa League, here we come.
For sure. So last week we made the mistake of the women's review to start with the highlights and move to the lowlights. So we'll start with the lowlight. I'm also going to be the Auckland losses, of course, which I think is what you guys are going to talk about as well. But I remember that moment where it was really early in the season. We played Wanderers at home. We had a decent crowd for the little corner of yellow, and in the very first minute, Hughesy slips and they score. And at that point, you're just like, it's not a big deal. But retrospectively, and I know that's a bit teleological, but that just felt like not the beginning of the end, but it was just like this really depressing moment. So maybe it's retrospective, but anyway, that and just the Auckland matches.
My worst one was probably Brisbane's second to last game of the season, so Brisbane away. By that time, we were gone. We had no chance of making finals. There was nothing to play for. Brisbane were factually a worse team than us, one of the few in the league, but they were worse than us. So we had nothing to play for. So we could just go out and do what we wanted, play the young players, just play some fun football for the fans. We didn't. We sat back and defended and didn't have a shot on target until the 60th, 70th minute. And it was just like, this is what this whole season's been about. And we didn't need to play like that. It didn't matter whether we won or lost because it was all over. So we didn't need to keep the score down. A 0-0 draw would not have helped us at all. And he just thought, come on, just give us something to hold on to. Give us a bit of enjoyment here. Just do that. Luke Brooks-Smith, I think, had the free shots or the free attempts or goal that we had with Luke Brooks-Smith just coming on and just running around like the headless chicken he is, wonderfully, always forward. But apart from that, there was so little. And it was just so disappointing that it was it just summed up the entire season and why it had been so poor.
I have two lowlights. So the first one was the first loss to Auckland. You can talk about the other losses, but the first loss I think was the most, gut sinking, because I actually thought we had the chance to get something out of that game. We had the chance to do something well, and it was kind of when the whole season started spiraling out of control. And the other one is the whole season.
I think my low light is when Alex Rufer caught mono and he was out for such a long time. And I just think the team did not do well without him there and his leadership, and just him in the midfield kind of playing those balls. I had no backup plan for that. The team is almost built around what Rufer can do, and then we had no one who could kind of do that. And the team didn't deal with it well, and he was out for such a long time. And then when he came back, he just took a long time to get back into the rhythm of things. And I still think that at the end of the season, he was still probably recovering to get back into his Rufer ways. He was still kind of kicking people and doing shithousery, which we love, but his actual playing wasn't quite what it was pre-mono. And so hopefully he can kind of come back and in the off-season fully recover and start the season strong.
I will move to highlights. very early on in the season, like the fourth game, we played Mariners at home. Now, we obviously had a huge rivalry with the Mariners from last season. We had a pretty gut-wrenching loss to them that basically cost us the premiership and stuff like that. So, we headed up to Gosford, and it was a big game. And also because it was so early in the season, it was like, well, how are these things going to pan out for us? How are they going to pan out for them? Like, are we going to be right at the top of the league again? Is it going to be that kind of season for both of our clubs? And Ishige, beautiful, beautiful free kick goal, solid goals from Costa, from Sarts, 3-0 win, and that felt so good because we'd just come off that first Auckland derby, that first loss, and just that feeling of like really putting it to the Mariners, just a very comprehensive win at their place. That felt good, and it's kind of downhill from there in so many ways. But that was great. That was a great game for us.
My highlight is a bit broader. My highlight for the season is Auckland FC, and I'm going to have to explain this, I'm sure. So Phoenix has been around for about 18 years now, and having a team to support in this part of the world has been brilliant. Obviously we're all football fanatics. We wouldn't be doing this podcast if we weren't, and we love supporting a football team. And part of supporting a football team is that good times and you get bad times. And I genuinely believe you can't appreciate the good times unless you've seen the bad times. Last year, getting that close to semi-final, getting close to grand final was amazing. If we got to grand final, it would have been absolutely mind-blowing. I don't think you will say that Melbourne City fans who are about to go to their 5th grand final in 6 years are as excited as we would have been. Okay, you've got to have the bad times to get the good times. But the one thing that I think we've missed since we've been in the league is a proper rival. Now, there's teams that we don't like. We don't like Sydney FC or Melbourne Victory because they're big and they're rich and they win everything. But apart from them, and the odd occasional little blip when we can dislike Western United because of the Rudan, there's no one really to dislike. The Central Coast, you can't dislike them. They're too much like us. Same with Perth. Brisbane have just been done over by their owners. So again, unless you've got a weird reason to dislike one team in particular, we don't really have any big rivals in there the way that you have when you've been supporting a team all your life. And I'm talking about British football here, foreign football, the rivals that you have that have been going on for many, many years. And you've got Wellington Phoenix, which is a team which is run by a group of local businessmen who have set up that team specifically for the reason of promoting football in the Wellington and the wider New Zealand region. That's why they're not doing it for money. They're not making any money out of it. They're not expecting to make any money out of it. They're not doing it for ego. I don't even know the names of most of them. They're doing it for the right reasons. We've got a fan base which is organic and which is fun, very inclusive, and doesn't take itself too seriously. We're not ultras. We're not throwing flares. We don't think we're hard. We don't think we're macho. We just are there to enjoy the game and have it. So you've got that club, and if you wanted to build a supervillain that is the opposite of that club, you'd be looking for a foreign right-wing billionaire who is setting up a club to take money out of New Zealand football to support his other overseas businesses, because that's what Auckland FC are doing. They're here to make money for Bournemouth. That's all they're doing. They're not here to make football good for New Zealand. They may do, but that's not why they're here. They're here to make money for Bournemouth or his other overseas. So you'd have a fan base which is unorganic, which is set up by a marketing department, however well they've done. And they will have far more money than anybody else. So they're the perfect villain for Wellington Phoenix. And having a team to hate is almost as important to me as having a team to love. And it means that there's now a second game every weekend that I can get emotionally involved in, which is whoever's playing Auckland FC. It's doubled my enjoyment of the A-League. It's also doubled my disappointment at the A-League, because it means that in a season like this, when they do well and we do badly, I'm losing twice as much. But that's okay, because there will be seasons coming up when we do well and they do badly, and that'll be twice as enjoyment, giving twice as much enjoyment as we do at the moment. The last 7 minutes of the game against Melbourne Victory that Auckland played last week, I almost enjoyed that as much as the last 7 minutes of the game we played against Melbourne Victory last year in the semi-final. And when they didn't win, boy, it was good. So my highlight is the existence of Auckland FC.
That was poetic, Danny. That was like some Jason Pine shit. Highlights a really tricky one for me, and I thought long and hard about it. And I've gone with the moment before Ishige's missed header against Auckland in the first derby. Because just as that ball went into the box, I was like, he's going to score this. And it was going to be our first goal. It was going to be Auckland's first goal they've ever conceded. And we were going to lead them in the derby. And then he skied it. And that was one of the worst moments. So it went from one of the best moments to one of the worst moments. Yeah.
I really like what Danny said, being someone who lives in Auckland, seeing the love of the A-League grow in this city has been great. I think a lot of people kind of know what it is and who it is, and I think we can all combine and hate Sydney FC together, which is a great thing. But I'm someone, I've worn my Phoenix shirts around Auckland since I've lived here, 10 years or so, and no one's really said anything to me except for this year when suddenly they're telling me I'm supporting the wrong team. And the Phoenix is shit and blah 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 blah, and I love it. Like it's so much fun, and I had great joy being at Mount Smart Stadium last weekend when that final whistle blew, and it was very satisfying because we were in that exact same position last year, and so I know how it feels, and I know that will be upset, and that makes me happy. But my actual highlight for this season, I think, was our 1-0 win against Melbourne Victory at Unite Round. My first away game, technically. My first game that I've seen the first men's game I've seen in Australia. And to get that win against the now grand finalists was quite satisfying. I think Rojas set up Costa Barbarouses for the goal. And it's like I was a kid again watching that happen. I was like, this is vintage Phoenix here. I love it. And then we got the win from that and full 6 points from Unite Round while I was in Sydney, and it was a fantastic time.
All right. How are we feeling about next season? So we did talk about we have lost a lot of key players. I think the club will be keen to try and replace them and try and recruit right. And I think we were very unlucky with the injuries and illnesses last season. I mean, Kolakovsky, he played not even 90 minutes. Could you imagine if we had had him all season? Like, what a big difference that could have been in terms of us scoring more goals, Costa having someone else up there. Obviously, I'm just hoping things regress towards the mean in terms of injury and illness, and we don't get quite as unlucky in that way. And hopefully we're flexible enough with the tactics that we use. Who else has thoughts? I would, again, so this is one thing that has been spoken about, and if you missed the interviews of Domi and Gilly on Fever FM, again, please go and listen to them. It is like people say, oh, we don't have ambition, we just want to make the top six, and they say, look, the framing is that we should be disappointed if we don't make the top six. Like, that should be the bottom of the expectation ladder. But we do want to do better. We do want to win the league. The owners want to win the league. It's just hard. That's all. How are you guys feeling?
I feel when people say ambition, when they say a team has an ambition or a club has an ambition, what they really mean is money. That's what they mean. They mean money. What they're saying is we're not spending enough money. They're saying Auckland are ambitious. They want to win, therefore they're spending the money. It's like, well, okay. If that's what you mean, then say that. And yeah, okay, I don't think the owners have the kind of money that the owners of some of the other teams do, or have the money they're prepared to throw at a football club that some of the other owners are. But to say we haven't got ambition, we've definitely got ambition, but it's ambition within your restraints, whatever that might be. Now, you can be unhappy that we don't spend as much money. That's fair enough. I think the club officials said we spend enough money to finish in the top six every year. So if we don't finish in the top six, then we should be disappointed. So that's how they're defining the restraints and the ambition. I think next year is going to be very difficult, realistically. We've just got too many important positions to fill. And it's hard to do that. We've got nobody up front now. We only had one person up front this year, which wasn't enough. And now we've got two positions at least to fill up front. And they're the most expensive and the most difficult because goal scorers, are hard to say. Alex says, yeah, there's probably quite a lot of centre-backs out there. And if you go into sort of lower league football where we got Taylor and Wotton from in England, yeah, you can probably pick up a centre-back for reasonable money. And you pick the right kind of person who wants to move to New Zealand, and you can probably get a very decent centre-back who will do a decent job. But a goal scorer, if they were good, they wouldn't be really good. They wouldn't be coming to the A-League. You've got to get them somehow where they're just on a cusp for some reason, like Zawada, where he suddenly, hadn't been too good for a couple of years and then comes here and then just kicks off and has had a really good season in Holland this year. Very difficult to find that. We have quite a good record of finding good players, but this year we didn't recruit as well overseas, and it's going to be very difficult to do them well. So I think this season, realistically, it's going to be almost like a rebuilding of our academy. We're going to be hoping they're going to get better and come through. Luke Brooks-Smith, you Gabby Sloan Rodriguez, you Walkers, hopefully will develop and get a bit better. And yeah, again, I can't see us really doing anything other than getting into the six. I think hoping for more than that is just a bit too optimistic.
I think it's hard to predict what's going to happen when we don't have any transfer rumours or anything coming out. All we know is that players have left. And we don't know anything about who we might even be looking at. And if there aren't any soon, then I might just start some to just make it fun. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tough season. I feel like we always have this cycle of rebuild, then good season, then rebuild. But I think now we're just rebuilding again and again, since we lost all of our players last season, and then we've just lost them all again. And so I hope that we don't get the wooden spoon. I think getting top six with the squad we have at this very second would be a tough ask. But I mean, I don't know. Anything could happen in the A-League. We might find another Zavada in the rough or something and get a few more goals and find ourselves up the table.
Yeah, the A-League's unpredictable. I think, top six is probably where we should be aiming for, but could, easily swing either way. Could finish 8th, could finish 4th. Who knows? Just hopefully it's the 4th.
Right. Well, if there are no other comments to be made, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for joining us all season. We will be back next season, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, to see how things go for both of our teams. I'm really excited about how the women's season is shaping up. I think there's a lot of ambition there in terms of resourcing and really wanting to try and win that competition. But obviously we want to see the men do well as well. But it's football. You never know. All right. Thanks for joining us. Katoa.